Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Ben Pereira. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a diversity, inclusion, and belonging program manager here at HubSpot. I'm a first generation Azorian American who started at HubSpot just over a year ago. It wasn't too long ago that I was in your shoes beginning my career in tech. So this conversation we're about to have is especially important to me as someone who is both first gen and working in DIMB. Understanding how to find companies that align with your personal values and morals is crucial. I hope you've all benefited greatly from your experience at First Gens in tech so far. We'll try to keep the momentum with this panel as we have two incredible people joining the conversation as we unpack what to look for when evaluating tech companies. Before we get started, please feel free to interact with each other and start a dialogue using the chat feature. We'll also take questions that you have in the second half of today's session, so please submit them in the Q&A box. Now allow me to introduce Jonathan and Jerry. Jonathan Javier is a CEO and founder of Wonsulting, whose mission is to turn underdogs into winners. He's been featured on Forbes, Fox News, Business Insider, The Times, LinkedIn News, Yahoo News, JobScan, and Brains Magazine as a top job search expert. He's amassed 1 million followers, over 1 million followers on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, as well as over 30 million impressions monthly on his content. That is mind-blowing. Jerry Lee is the COO and founder of Wonsulting and an ex-senior strategy and operations manager at Google and used to lead product strategy at Lucid. Through his work, he's spoken at more than 250 events and amassed more than 350,000 followers across LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram combined. His work has reached 100 million plus job seekers globally. In addition, his work has been featured in Forbes, Newsweek, Business Insider, Yahoo News, and LinkedIn, and was elected as the 2020 LinkedIn Top Voice for Tech. Thank you both so much for being here. And I would love to get started with a small question, but a big one. What has been your journey so far in the tech world, and how did your first gen identity play a role in that? Would love for you to walk us through your backgrounds to tech today.
Well, of course. First off, Ben, Will, and everybody here at HubSpot and everybody joining today, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. You could be anywhere today. You could be having lunch, which I had literally right before this. You could be having lunch somewhere else, but you're here listening to us. So I just want to say thank you. And if you all are thankful, put hashtag HubSpot in the chat and let Ben and Will know. But my name is Jonathan Javier. I'm the CEO of Wonsulting. And yeah, my journey, especially coming from a first gen background, was really interesting to say the least. So I still remember when I was in school from UCR. I see some UCR represent in the comments, but I still remember coming from UCR, and I come from a Filipino background, right? Not a lot of Filipinos are in tech. If anybody here is Filipino, let me know. But I still remember trying to break into my dream industry in tech, and I was getting rejected by hundreds of different jobs. And I thought that it was because of my background, because of the school I attended. But then I realized that by utilizing unconventional strategies and by putting myself out there and putting yourself out there, you can be able to gain opportunities that you've never heard of. So actually, for my roles at Snapchat, Google, and Cisco, never even apply to them, just utilize LinkedIn. And that's what Jerry and I and Wonsulting teach all the time, especially on our social media channels. How are you able to land jobs without applying? How do you embrace your diversity to land jobs and network with individuals such as Will and all of these people here to land those opportunities and land your dream job? So that's how it kind of came about, but I'll hand it off to Jerry.
Cool. Thanks, John. First, I want to thank Ben, Will, the rest of the HubSpot team for hosting us here. We are so excited to talk about this because out of all the events that Jonathan and I spoke at, none of them have focused specifically on first gen. And John and I realized we don't talk about this enough. So type in the chat if you come from a first gen background or feel comfortable, type hashtag FG in the chat. We want to see it. But to give a quick intro about myself, my name is Jerry. I'm a first generation low income student. I see all the hashtag FGs. I love it. You all should be proud. That should be something we should all wear because that honestly is one of the things that fuel me and really shaped me to be the person I am today. So my journey into tech was that when I got into college, I didn't know a single thing about recruiting. Who here felt that way? Type me if you felt that way, where when you got into college, you didn't know how to dress professionally. You didn't know what a resume is, right? So many of us relate to these stories because it's true, right? And that's why Jonathan and I really focus so much of our time and attention on helping educate everyone who come from non-traditional backgrounds, first-gen backgrounds, to help you get into your dream career. But for me, my career was that I somehow luckily got into Google. I was the first intern at Google from my alma mater. Later was hired as an analyst into my organization, rose to the ranks there before I left to lead a product strategy team. And now I'm the co-founder, COO of Wonsulting, where our mission is to turn our underdogs into winners. And that's what we're here to talk about today, how you all can not only learn a little bit more about the job search process, but also think about how do you think about companies that you want to work for, especially in tech, and how you make those decisions. So thank you once again for sharing your time and attention. It's super excited to dive in.
Jerry, you use the word luckily, which I like, because I think that for so many folks, they begin their career in tech, particularly first gen folks, they feel as if it comes with a bit of luck. We tend to doubt ourselves a little bit, and we get that first opportunity. And it's like, wow, I'm so lucky to have had this opportunity to work for a company like this. So I'm curious, you talk about coming from a first gen, low income background, immigrant background. How did your upbringing shape your initial job search when looking for your first role in tech?
Oh my gosh, Ben, I love that you asked this question. So for me, growing up in a first-gen low-income household, so my family came here when I was a baby, and we didn't have a single person that we knew in the States when we came here. Type me if that's you. If that's your family came to the States, you're an immigrant, or maybe you're second generation, and your family really worked hard to be where you are today. I see a lot of you typing me. Right? Because that's my family story, and it probably rings very similar to so many of you here today. And for me, what I felt like the biggest thing I learned growing up in a first-gen low-income household was how hard my parents had to work to get even the simplest things. I remember when my family was when we were struggling to put food on the table, my parents had just learned about food stamps. And I remember when my family got approved for food stamps, my mom literally had tears in her eyes because she had like her arms full of like bags of chips and like pudding and like all the things that she wanted to buy, but we just didn't have the funds to, right? But learning about these experiences for me made me realize, man, if two random people from Korea could somehow make their lives in America, fight through all the cultural, the language, all those the financial barriers, for us to still be here 26 years later, to me has taught me the value of hard work. How that translates to recruiting was that when I looked around my peers when I got into college, everyone had uncles at McKinsey. They had, their cousins who were software engineers at Google and Facebook, and they got referrals left and right. I looked at that going, well, if they can do it, so can I. And so I took a lot of the principles that I learned growing up in a first-gen background of hard work into my recruiting strategies. And I was a kid who went into the career center every week. I would look through our career, like Handshake or the career portal, applying to companies like HubSpot every single day, because I was really like, well, if these people can get jobs, why can't I?
I love that. And that could be a catchphrase for the conference. If they can do it, so can I. That's kind of what we're hoping to break down here, is to just make sure that other folks know that there is room for you in this industry. Jonathan, you speak regularly on the struggles that you faced to find opportunities coming from a non-target school or a non-traditional elite business institution. I think there are a lot of folks who come from a variety of different academic backgrounds here in the chat, some of which may not even have a college degree. But you also mentioned that you applied to hundreds of jobs and all you received is rejections. And I'm sure there are so many folks who also resonate with that in the chat. How many folks type me have sent out dozens, if not hundreds of applications and still wonder why that they weren't getting that first opportunity? So many of you are resonating with that. How did you shift your mindset?
Yeah, this is such a great question. And I was about to ask, like, who here has been rejected for roles? And it seems like a lot of individuals have been. Everyone's saying me, me, me. How many roles have you applied to, everybody? And how many rejections have you received? Let us know in the comments, because I remember being that same way. And I would go on the careers websites. I would simply apply to the jobs, hoping a response back from one of these companies, when in fact, all I would receive is either be ghosted, or it would start by saying, unfortunately, we've decided to, AKA rejection emails, right? Everyone's putting it in the comments, put a sad face if that's you, right? But how you are able to get into your career is all about mindset, right? A quote that I love saying all the time is rejection is redirection. So whenever you get rejected for a role, look at it as a redirection to get you motivated. And instead of getting a setback, make it a comeback. Who here is on LinkedIn and has seen people announcing their jobs? Has anybody seen people like, I'm happy to announce? I used to think the same way. I'd be like, I wish I had that job, right? Instead, when you're able to shift your mindset, when you're in your job search, you're going to be able to see opportunities where you might not even know there's opportunities. So for example, when you see those posts on LinkedIn, instead of being like, oh, shoot, like, I wish I had that job, go look at the people they tagged. Guess who the people they tagged are? The people that they tagged are literally the hiring managers and recruiters for the roles. Why not reach out to them and have your own happy to announce story weeks later, right? So when you are on your job search, always remember this. Number one, you are not alone. If you've noticed in the comments, everybody's saying, yes, I've been rejected for countless of different roles. All of you have been rejected for roles, myself and Jerry too as well, right? It's all about how you bounce back from those rejections. Number two, don't be scared to share your story on social media platforms such as LinkedIn, right? When you're able to share your story, if you come from a first-generation background, you notice that others come from first-generation backgrounds too as well, which is going to allow you to also network with these individuals. Last but not least, network with people who come from your same background. So for example, Ben was talking about how I came from a non-target school, right? Go network with other individuals who come from smaller schools or non-target schools. They will understand the struggles that you are going through. And by establishing that common ground, you're going to be able to shift that mindset and be able to network with these individuals to land your dream job.
I love that. And as we continue on in the job search, there are many folks who are going to begin, or as we saw in the chat, so many folks have begun and applied to countless opportunities. How do you all go about, especially in today's job market? So many companies put up blanketed statements about their values, and oftentimes it isn't until you're a few months into the role where you realize that those values are much closer to platitudes than core foundations for the business. So either one of you can answer this, but how do you decipher authenticity in a company before you apply for the job?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. You know, one of the things that we, for the people that we work with, this is one of the things that we highly, highly recommend, that when you're looking for companies that you want to work for, you have to really define what's important to you, right? Type in the chat, everybody. What's most important for you about your job? Is it culture? Is it company size, company brand, compensation, job function, growth? What is most important to you as you're sort of thinking about looking for internship, or, right? I see a lot of you, right? We have culture, freedom, DEI, right? Benefits, compensation, right? Rewarding feeling. I love that. The best way for you to really assess whether or not a company is really aligned to your values is define, how do you define values? Is it growth, flexibility, learning, right? Really pick one or two and do two things. Reach out, go onto LinkedIn, go onto the search bar, search up people who are currently in that role. If you're going for marketing, type in marketing manager at HubSpot. Talk to current employees, talk to 2 current employees. Similarly, you also want to talk to ex marketing manager employees at HubSpot, right? You want to be thinking about roles and companies. When you sort of think about roles and companies, you want to be talking to people who are currently in the role today to get a good understanding of why are they there? What's keeping them there? But also to people who may have left to say, hey, listen, like, how would you think about your time at HubSpot? So that way you get that full 360 experience, a 360 really feedback as to whether or not the company truly is aligned with the values that you've defined.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, great points, Jerry, too, as well. One thing that you all should do is, like we talked about before, find individuals who come from your same background that you can connect with, that work at these respective companies, because you've probably seen these really big tech companies, it's a majority, predominantly a specific ethnicity or background, right? Who here comes from a background of color? A lot of you do, correct? What I used to do all the time, everybody, is this. I'm gonna give you this really, really cool strategy I used to do. So HubSpot, for example, has employee resource groups. I was involved with Asian Googler Network when I was at Google. I was involved with ECN, Early Career Network at Cisco. What you do is you find the employee resource groups, and I just looked it up right now. I typed in employee resource groups HubSpot, and I saw that they had people of color at HubSpot, LGBTQ+. So what I did was I went on LinkedIn, I searched LGBTQ+ Alliance, I filtered directly to HubSpot, and guess what? I found 30+ people that I could connect with that are literally part of that employee resource group. Find these individuals, network with them, and learn about what they enjoy most about their role. What do they value in the company? So then you can see for yourself, oh, is this a company that I want to work for? This person is the same identity as me. Does this person enjoy where they work? That is how you can find exactly what you want to do and what company you want to work for, and see if their values align with yours. So I'd highly recommend doing that. It's a strategy that I've personally done and been able to network with a lot of different individuals.
I love that you give a plug for ERGs. My role, I get to oversee a lot of the ERG communities, and I oversee the LGBTQ+ Alliance. And I think it's a great strategy to go about connecting with folks in that space, because ERGs are typically community hubs. They're not like business advocacy groups. They're going to give you very candid experiences. And they're going to be real and raw with you. Typically, I would hope that they're going to be real and raw with you. And if they're not, then certainly contacting an ex-employee, they're certainly going to have no motivation to try to sell you on the company. They're going to give you their honest opinion and perspective. And so I think that's a really brilliant idea. I never thought of that when I was going through the job search. You always contact a friend who works there, or someone you know on LinkedIn who works there. You're going to get an opinion. It's usually going to be typically positive. That's their job. Their job is to get you to come into the company. So I love that you're mentioning finding the ex-employees too.
Mm-hmm.
My next question for you both, or either one of you, is there's a lot of talk of a term that I really don't like, actually. It's the term of culture fit, trying to fit into a culture. And I think for a lot of first-gen folks, there's this pressure to fit into the mold of tech and try to be what they perceive to be a tech employee. What advice would you give to folks here listening who are trying to shape themselves and to fit into a mold of what they think the perfect candidate is for XYZ company, if one even exists?
Yes. So this is a great question. Who here wants to work in a tech company? And let me know what companies y'all want to work for in the chat. Maybe you want to work for HubSpot. Hopefully all of you want to work for HubSpot, right? Oh, everyone says HubSpot. Perfect. So a lot of these companies, everybody, I think what happens a lot is people will focus more so on the company rather than the actual position, right? So what you have to do is you have to know that when you're going through these interview processes or you're networking with all these big tech companies, a lot of them look at thought process, right? How do you think? How do you react? Have you collaborated with different teams? Have you problem solved? That's the first part. The second part is, it's okay if for these companies, like I talked about the employee resource groups, find your tribe. That's what I like to say. Find your tribe. Find the individuals that you identify with. And I'm going to give you another strategy. So I love strategies. Jerry gets sick of me talking about job search strategies all the time. But what you all should do is, since you all are first gen, literally search first gen on LinkedIn and go to any company you're interested in, whichever it is. You will find individuals on their headlines that literally say first gen advocate. Guess what? You are first gen. The other person's a first gen advocate. If you reach out and you say, hey, I saw that you worked at this company. I'd love to connect with you. I'm a first gen. I really relate to your story. Imagine what value that you could find from that individual that can help you through the processes of learning about how that culture is. So I'd highly recommend doing that. But always remember, everybody, like when I joined Google and Cisco, I didn't know where my tribe was. But when you're able to find the different ERGs or employee resource groups in these organizations and companies, you'll find your tribe and you'll find opportunities that you've never saw before. Like I did a talk at Google and I never thought I would ever do a talk at Google, but the AGN was able to give me that opportunity. So you can never know what kind of opportunities come about, especially with joining organizations. And sometimes when you join that organization, you will find your tribe.
I love the sentiment of finding your tribe in an organization. And this question wasn't what we talked about prior to this, so excuse the offhandedness. But you talk a bit about connecting on LinkedIn, and so many of your strategies are rooted in utilizing social media in a way that's going to benefit you for the job search. You also talk about how you've gotten roles just through your activity on LinkedIn. LinkedIn can feel like yet another puzzle to crack for so many folks, particularly first gen folks. You're trying to get your resume right. You're trying to get your cover letter right. You're trying to understand the company's values and morals. And on top of that, you're all supposed to be pretty polished on LinkedIn so you can be noticed. And when you are reaching out, that your profile stands out. So what advice would either one of you give to folks who are building their LinkedIn, who are trying to build more of their own personal brand on LinkedIn, to help them in their job search process?
Yeah. Everybody in the chat, who here is active on LinkedIn and who here is passive on LinkedIn? Type active or passive on in the chat to see if you're one or the other. Awesome. Oh my gosh. So many of you are active. That's incredible. So the way that we like to think about this is that you sort of have the spectrum of passiveness and active on LinkedIn, and sort of like a spectrum where on one hand, you sort of have passive users who come on LinkedIn maybe once a month, once a week, they'll scroll through the feed and they'll hop off. And you sort of have people on the opposite end who use LinkedIn almost like another social media channel. And you'll engage, you'll create content, you'll comment a post, and so on and so forth. And there's sort of people in the middle where I feel like generally that's where most people sit, where you might be hopping on LinkedIn once, twice, 3 times a week, comment on something, and then maybe hop off. So with every no matter where you are on the sort of the active and passive spectrum, you have to have a great LinkedIn. Everybody in the chat, how confident do you feel about your LinkedIn? 1 to 5. 5 being like, Jerry, my LinkedIn's perfect. Or 1 being like, I could use a little bit of work. 4.5, 4, 3, 5. Okay, cool. Awesome. So one of the strategies that we love talking about with every single one of y'all here is we have a templated LinkedIn profile called Wonsulting Javier, or Wendy Javier. And this is a templated profile that you can literally copy and paste. And yes, this is, we like to say this is John's cousin. But yeah, it's a fictional profile. But we want you all to look at this LinkedIn, copy paste the sections if you don't feel like a 5. Because once you have a strong profile, then you feel confident enough to go, cool, I have a good headshot, I have a good about section, my experience is solid, and now you can do all these active strategies that Jonathan and I talk about all the time. Networking, personalized invites, and so on and so forth. So at least step 1 to being active on LinkedIn is making sure you have a strong profile. Wonsulting Wendy is absolutely the profile that we recommend everyone to use.
Yeah, and I was going to say, definitely proactively use LinkedIn and share your story. I think it's very important, especially since all of you come from first-gen backgrounds. What we challenge you is to share your first-gen story, right? Share it on LinkedIn, and you never know who else comes from first-gen backgrounds. Someone might reach out to you and be like, oh, hey, Alexis, I saw that you posted about being a first gen. I actually came from Venezuela. I remember someone came from Venezuela here to the US. I came from Venezuela to the US when I was 10, and I really relate to your story. You'll be able to get reactive opportunities where opportunities will come to you instead of you always having to seek opportunities. And we actually did this, and someone actually did this challenge before. We actually recommended it. And she actually got 5,000 likes on her story. And she was like, Jonathan, like, Jerry, I got hit up like 50 times regarding my story of how I came from an international background, right? So you never know what kind of opportunities may come about, more folks that you can connect with too as well. And last but not least, just growing your personal brand is always awesome, especially when you're on a job search, and you can utilize it during your interviews.
I love that. I'm so glad I asked that question. I need to be friends with Wendy, so like, connect me. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna look at that profile after, as I'm someone who is in the between the active and the passive. I gave myself like a 3.5. I love all the other fellow decimal people in there who couldn't commit to a whole number in their evaluation. But thank you. I appreciate that both. And y'all should both connect or follow with Jerry and Jonathan on LinkedIn, as they're both really good at building their own personal brand and generating a lot of engagements in their posts. Transitioning a bit to salary. That's a big discussion in our industry. And so many folks look at the tech industry, and a lot of its allure does come from the fact that there are so many high-paying roles that you can get in this business. Aside from compensation, though, how else do you encourage people to identify whether or not the offer that they have on the table is one that will help them grow meaningfully in their career?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And it's something that I wish I thought a lot about. So really the biggest thing that we tell people all the time is that oftentimes, actually, let me ask the chat, everyone in the chat, what do you look for in a job? Compensation, culture, growth opportunities, upward mobility, function, job title, location, impact, growth, culture. Yeah. Culture. Awesome. So we got comp, growth, community impact, DEI, PTO, how they take care of their employees, right? So for some of you, it sounds like you have that one North Star where it's like growth, culture, impact. But for others, it's compensation, growth, PTO, how you sort of think about your employees. This now sort of becomes your criteria for what you want to find in your job. And you have to make sure you sort of do your due diligence to make sure it checks all the right boxes for you. So for example, one of the things I really optimized for after I left Google was I said, you know what? I want to purely optimize for growth opportunities. Nothing else matters. So I eventually got into a role at Lucid where I had a massive growth opportunity. I was going to manage a large team of analysts, and I was going to work with SVPs and potentially some CEOs. And but at the same time, what I forgone was location, because I would have had to move to Salt Lake City, and compensation because this was a smaller tech company. And that was okay because I knew that I was optimizing for growth at that time. So the biggest thing I'd recommend for people is really list out what are the most important things to you as you start thinking about a job, and how do they rank? Is it a 5 or is it a 1? Because the more that you could sort of think about what that scale looks like, the more you can make a very unbiased decision and very logical decision as you start thinking about your next step in your career.
Yeah, and I was going to mention too as well, like listen to Jerry regarding this advice, because I actually took his advice, especially when doing these negotiations. And just to do a quick thing about compensation, everybody, who here is scared to ask for more compensation when they get a job? Oh, sorry. When they get a job. Is anybody scared to ask that? All right. A lot of you, right? Cool. So I remember it's crazy, and I'll be super transparent with you. When I was at Snapchat, I made almost minimum wage. Like, I kid you not. And the reason why is I actually never even negotiated. I was just thought that, oh, I made into a tech company. I'm so honored to be here. Who here has felt like that when they're joining a company, or like, oh, I'm just thankful to be here, right? When in reality, and I did the same thing at Google, barely negotiated, right? I was scared, right? I realized at the end of the day, if you never ask, you never know. And I wish that someone taught me all these different things about negotiation when I got older. Thankfully, Jerry was one of those individuals, and I was able to increase my compensation at Cisco by like 25%. So just a quick note, if you're going to be negotiating compensation, definitely do your research, look at the market value, look at different platforms such as Glassdoor, Levels.fyi. And yes, Jerry's the real MVP.
I appreciate that feedback on compensation. I mean, my first job ever post-college, similarly, I made minimum wage. Wasn't in the tech industry, was in the sports industry, and I didn't negotiate. And then I got my first job in tech, and I was so pleased just to be making like a really healthy salary that I didn't negotiate there either. So even as you both are living testaments, and I myself am a testament that you're still ebbing and flowing, and your growth is continuous as you build yourself up in the tech industry. So thank you both for sharing that. As someone who's transitioned into tech from a different industry, I know there's some folks on this call who are currently working in a different industry and are looking at tech and are desiring a career in tech, but are a little bit, maybe they're feeling undervalued, underutilized, or lacking growth. What advice would you share to someone who is kind of feeling that sense of underutilization in their role, whether they're in tech or out of tech, and are looking for a new opportunity?
Yes, I love this. Sorry, I love job search strategy stuff, so I'll take this one. Yeah, let us know, what industry are you currently in right now, and what industry do you want to get into in the future? I see higher ed to tech, amazing. Okay, anybody else? Education to tech? Oh, a lot of you education tech, finance to tech, wonderful. So I'm gonna give you a strategy that not a lot of people know about, and it's actually what I utilize myself because I used to work in retail. So I was at Kohl's. And I thought I would never be able to get into tech because, well, it's such a huge transition. But what you all have to do, and what we've spoken about throughout this whole entire, almost for about 30 minutes, a lot of the time here, is you find people that share that common ground with you. So what you do, everybody, is this. On LinkedIn, you put your past company as whatever industry you are currently in right now. So what I used to do is I worked at Kohl's. So I put past company as Kohl's. Then I put the current company as whatever company you're interested in. Let's just say I want to work at HubSpot. I put the current company at HubSpot. Then I search whatever company or whatever field I'm interested in. Let's just say I'm interested in operations. I search operations. What's going to happen is you're going to find every single person who made the transition from retail to tech who work in operations. I kid you not, try it right now. Do it to any company. You can find everybody who used to work at your current industry that now work in your dream industry. What you do is you reach out to them. You say, hey, I saw that my name is Anna Harris. I saw that you used to work in pharma and now work specifically in tech. Just want to hear more about your story and would love to connect. Now, why would you reach out to these people? The reason why you would reach out to these people is because guess what? They've already made the switch. They know how to get in. Imagine they give you the blueprint of how you can get into as well. So I'd highly recommend using that strategy. And it's something that not a lot of people know about, but now y'all know.
Yeah, absolutely. Like really the core essence of it is really making sure you connect with the person who has stepped in your shoes, has the exact same career path, except they're just one step ahead, right? That's really, really awesome. And I highly recommend that. The other way that I've also realized that most people, when they sort of think about job switching, especially people who come from first-gen backgrounds, is that they sort of undersell themselves, right? For example, let me get a sense of like, who here feels like they're not like smart enough for tech, or they're not good enough for tech? Let me know in the chat. Because, right, some of you, maybe not some of you, right? Not skilled enough, right? Imposter syndrome is so real in tech, and it exists not only from the intern level, and it goes all the way to the CEO level, believe it or not. My mentor is an executive coach and has coached CEOs from Fortune 500 companies, and they feel it too. The biggest thing I recommend when you're thinking about doing a switch, right, is know that, for example, when you're doing marketing in pharma and you want to go to marketing in tech, when you pitch yourself, when you're going in interviews, you don't want to say, hey, listen, I've specialized specifically in marketing a specific type of pharmaceutical drug, and that's the only thing I know how to do. Because when you do that, you sort of silo yourself into marketing and pharma. Instead, you want to take it one step higher and say, you know what? I'm a marketing manager, and my skill is that I can get people to buy, and I can build brand awareness. Those are the two things I'm really good at. And that's why that's the skills I want to bring over to tech. Because now when you sort of think about it, you're now using all the core principles that you've learned in marketing, whether it's brand awareness, paid media, emails, SMS campaigns, and so on and so forth. You take those skills and say, I just want to apply it to a different space. Because when you sort of have that elevator pitch, that story, you go from, hey, listen, I've developed so much and almost everything there is to know about how consumers think on the pharma side. I want to do that exact same thing to tech. That's an incredible pitch, rather than so many of the first generation folks I talk to, they always go, listen, Jared, I've never done anything in tech. So when I talk to these people, I tell them the truth. I tell them I don't know how to do marketing in tech. But the fact of the matter is you do know how to do it. It's just using the same skills, just in a different location.
Thank you both for that. And I invite folks to begin to put your questions in the Q&A. I know a few of you have. We'll be answering these questions shortly. Right before we get to the Q&A section, I'd love to ask you both a question. Earlier this afternoon, I was in a conversation with folks during the networking hour, and I was speaking to this remarkable woman who was battling her own sense of imposter syndrome on the job search, particularly with English being her second language or her non-native language. What advice would you give to folks who are feeling a little bit of that self-consciousness over having, over not speaking the first language of the company that they're applying with?
I want to take this first part because I recently made a LinkedIn post about this. Know that really having English as a second language isn't actually a hindrance. If anything, it shows that you have even more intellect than someone who speaks only one language, because implicitly by you having English as a second language, you are someone who knows two languages instead of just one. So know that by no means does you not feeling confident in your English means that you're a lower intellect or anything like that. It doesn't mean it's not a negative thing at all. It absolutely is something that you should be proud of that. That being said, I do understand that despite that, it is hard to still find that superpower within yourself, because you might feel like your English may not be good enough. I know my parents struggled with this a ton when they were looking for work and when they were sort of going through my upbringing. The way that I feel like we've typically helped people get around this is really making sure, going back to the community piece, right? Really making sure you connect with people who, for example, we've helped a lot of folks who come from India, really making sure you connect with people who come from India who have now positioned themselves into tech, really connecting them and sort of taking them out as your mentors. But most importantly, when you get on to into the company, having them as your champions. Because one of the things that I think Jonathan does extremely well at is that, especially even in our Wonsulting team meetings, is that he'll often say like we might having an internal debate, but John will come in and say, but listen, like, I think what X person is trying to say is that they're trying to say that this idea should be XYZ. Having a champion like that internally at a company is going to be huge, not only for your job search, but also making sure that you feel comfortable in the workplace, despite you not feeling like your English may not be perfect. Exactly, Deja. Sponsorship is everything.
Yeah, no, honestly. And can you repeat the question, Ben? Jerry's was just so good. It was about English being the second language, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So basically what I would say, everybody, and plus 100 to Jerry's points too, is I know I spoke about finding your tribe, but it's those organizations, those DEI organizations that y'all should join. Like, you all are part of First Gen here at HubSpot, which is amazing. All right. There's also organizations, if you're students, that are directly related to your ethnicity too. So for example, when I was at UCR, they had something called Kababayan, but they also, for Filipinos, but they also had something called Alpha, which was for Latinos, right? So when you're able to join these organizations, you're going to find individuals that also didn't have English as their first language. They probably spoke Spanish, or the Filipinos spoke Tagalog, right? Those are the individuals that you can also have a support system with that'll keep pushing you to where you want to be. And then you go network with alumni who are from those organizations that work at the respective companies you're interested in. And guess what? They probably, most likely, don't have English as a first language too as well.
I love all that advice. And I wish I could share that with some of my grandparents who came here and always struggled with English being their second language. We have a few questions in the Q&A section right now. I'll try to go through these rapid fire over these next 6-7 minutes. But Malik asks, what type of skills do you think are synonymous to get into tech companies / position with little to no experience coming from a non-tech background? So there are a few skills that stand out that would be really beneficial to highlight.
Yeah, I was going to say, some universal things that we've seen: collaboration skills, extremely important. If you were to present to a senior executive or someone on the team, would you be able to do that? Presentation skills, problem solving skills, all these different skills are very relevant, especially to your field. One thing as well too is, I know you said little to no experience. If you think about it, everybody has experience in your field. Now, let me explain. So for tech, when I was trying to get into like my tech company, Snap, Google, Cisco, I thought I didn't have relevant experience. But I realized that if you're able to tailor your resume or tailor the positions that you've done towards that relevant field or industry and have that same language, that's what's going to help you stand out. So that's why it's important to network with people who are in the roles, because they will give you the insights of what they do on the day-to-day. Then when they give you the insights of what they do on the day-to-day and the hard skills that they utilize, then you apply it to your own resume and your own skills, work on some projects that are based on those skills. then put that directly into your resume. And now you've had some experience that's relevant to the industry you're trying to get into.
Yeah. Similarly, I think that's a really great point. The best, one of the things that John and I talk about all the time is if you have absolutely no experience, people might sort of look at that as sort of a bad thing, but we sort of look at that as a great thing because now you're sort of a blank canvas and you can literally do anything. So the most important thing, the hardest part, I argue, is figuring out what is that one role you want to go for. Is it a software engineer, marketing, finance, sales? And you have to think about it. All those functions exist in tech companies, right? So you can be finance in tech, marketing in tech. The question is, what of those do you feel like sounds the most interesting to you? Because once you have that, then the next thing you need to do is look at a job description of that role that you want to go for and look at the bullet points that's required, the roles and responsibilities of that bullet point. Do you need to be good at Excel? Do you need to have Google Ads experience? Whatever that is, you just want to make sure you do that. The third step would be then to sign up for free online courses. For example, Harvard has, if you want to get to software engineering, Harvard has their computer science 101 course for free. If you literally go on Google search right now, you type in Harvard free CS 101, you'll go onto Udacity or udemy.com, and you'll have the entire curriculum for free. Because once you do that, then you go onto websites like Upwork or Contra.com, and you put your skills for project work. You do projects, you put that into your experience, make sure it fits all the job description requirements. And that's it. That's how you break in. Even if you don't have any experience that you feel like are tangible, that's okay, because now you have a roadmap that you can use and get into any field that you want.
I love the blank canvas sentiment. This next question I have actually asked a couple of times by Sarina and Jenna. And this is one that I know a lot of folks are going to be excited to hear the answer for. But what would you recommend doing when reaching out to recruiters or companies who work at companies that you're interested to have a coffee chat with, and you're just not getting a response? So how do you break through to those folks you're trying to connect with and you're just not getting anything? What advice do you have for like really putting out a good cold outreach?
Yeah. Jerry, you want to go first? Sorry.
No, dude, I think you love talking about
it. I love talking about this. So, so who here has reached out to a recruiter, hiring manager, they didn't respond? A lot of people, right? How did it make you feel? Made you feel pretty sad, right? Or probably a sad face, right? Not great, right? So I used to feel that same way, but then I realized at the end of the day, do you focus on the people who do respond, or do you focus on the people who don't? That's my question to y'all. And the reason why I say this is because when we've seen, especially when reaching out to hiring managers, recruiters, it's usually around 10% response rate, right? So do you focus on the one who doesn't, the 9 who don't respond, or the one that does? That's number one. Number two, the more people you reach out to, of course, the more chances you'll get. But another thing too as well is think about this. If you were a recruiter or a hiring manager, and let's say that someone reached out to you and they said the same language that you said to that recruiter or hiring manager, and you were that recruiter or hiring manager, would you respond? Why I say this all the time is because that's how you should be looking at it, especially when connecting with people. Would you respond to your own message that you're sending? And this is why it's super important, everybody, how we've spoken about today of how you exemplify that common ground aspect of you coming from a first-gen background, right? You finding that common ground between you and the other person. Because someone might be, for example, let's say Ben is hiring for DEI. I might just say, hey, Ben, saw you're hiring for DEI. Let's connect, right? But imagine I say, hey, Ben, hope you're doing well. My name is Jonathan Javier. I'm currently, let's just say I'm interested in DEI, specifically in the tech industry. I saw that you were heavily involved with first gen at HubSpot and is the lead for LGBTQ plus ERG at HubSpot. I identify with you because of XYZ. I'd love to connect and learn more about what you're recruiting for. Who would you respond? How would you respond to the first one, or would you respond to the second one? By doing that, everybody, that common ground thing that Jerry and I and Wonsulting always preaches, that is what builds connection. And it might even not just be connections, it might be friends, right? Like Jerry and I, we actually, funny story really quickly, I actually use the same strategies that we teach you at Wonsulting, literally did the same thing to Jerry. on LinkedIn. And look at that. Now we're co-founders, best friends, and workshop buddies. So you never know what'll come out of it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything that John said. And yeah, we actually, I have when John and I first met, he actually got me like a little Snapchat ghost that I have here, but that's a story for another time. But yeah, I 100% agree with John that coming from a first-gen background, most likely we don't have extensive networks that we could sort of touch upon and talk to our uncles who may know 16 partners at top consulting firms and investment banks and go, hey, can you pass my nephew an internship? Most of us don't have that. So what we have to do to make up for that is we need to go for quantity and quality. As John exactly mentioned, right? It's important for you to make sure that when you reach out to someone, don't say, hey, can I have a job? Or don't be one of those people who don't put any messages. Rather, make sure that you put something that's in common with them, whether it's your school, whether it's the event that you went to, whether it's their background, something that they posted that related to you, right? Make sure that you sort of put that to them or put that relevancy there, and make sure you go for quantity. At the end of the day, yes, you're not going to see everyone who replies, but you want to focus on all the attention on the people who do reply, because you have to think about it. How many jobs do you need? You only need one job. And that means that you really only need one person to say, listen, Nicole, Stephanie, I want to take a chance on you. I'm going to hire you, right? And that's how you really break in.
Would you respond to your own message? I think that's a really good parting theme for how to best go about working on LinkedIn and really trying to stand out. I mean, I've gotten so many different LinkedIn requests from folks who are attending this conference who have dropped me a note saying, hey, Ben, I'm at First Gens in Tech. That's an immediate yes. I'm immediately replying to you because I'm excited that you reached out. You found me from First Gens in Tech. If you're just sending me a LinkedIn request and you're not adding any personal note, I don't know who you are. I don't know how you know me. I don't know what your motive is for adding me on LinkedIn. So I'm not going to be quick to press accept there. So you really have to think, would I respond to that message? All really great advice. We're closing in on the final 2 minutes. So I really do want to just offer you both an opportunity to get any parting advice for these hungry job seekers here in the audience.
Yeah. First off, again, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Add us on LinkedIn, send us a personalized invite, add Ben too as well and Will. One thing I would say is remember that the job search is in your control, right? But some of it is also out of your control, right? How you react to things, how you go about things, it's all about how you perceive it, right? What we recommend is if you want more opportunities coming your way, like make a LinkedIn post about this event. I went to the First Gen at HubSpot event with Jonathan, Jerry, and Ben speaking regarding XYZ. This is what I learned, or this is my story, right? By doing so, you're going to showcase that you are going to events like these that are increasing your learning capabilities. And also you're learning so much more about how you can get into your careers, more about first gen backgrounds, et cetera. So always remember that the job search is in your control and we're going to help you through that.
Yeah, I love that. And on my part, is anyone worried about them not getting a job? Type in the chat. Are you worried that you're like, oh man, like I'm still worried about internships full-time, right? Yeah. I empathize with every single one of you who said, yes, me, right? Because when I was in college, I did the exact same thing. I remember I was talking to a senior when I was a freshman, and I was thinking to myself, man, everyone knows so much more than me. Everyone's so much more connected than me. How can I ever compete with these people who already know the basics of finance and accounting? I can never compete with them. And the advice that the senior told me was, she said, the fact that we're having this conversation, Jerry, the fact that you're worried and that you're putting time and energy and effort into your job search tells me that you're going to be fine. So to every single one of you here today, you just spent the past hour talking and engaging with a couple people who have, had a couple steps ahead or a couple steps ahead of you in your career. And you're trying to absorb as much as you possibly can so that you can get a job. So I want to pass along the same sentiment to you. The fact that you are here today, the fact that you are all trying to dedicate your time and effort to learn a little bit more about the job search so that you can make it for yourself, tells me that you're eventually going to figure it out. And in a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, when you're all successful, when you're all working at the greatest companies like HubSpot, you're also gonna come across people who are first gen, just like every single one of you here today. And they're gonna have the exact same type of mentality, being like, I'm so worried about my job search. I don't know what to do. And you're gonna think back to this exact moment because you're gonna realize how far you've made it. So thank you everyone so much for coming and giving your time and attention today.
Thank you both. Yes, I agree fully with that sentiment of remembering where you are, where you came from, and always you're ready to uplift those who are coming in after you. Ideally, I want that person after me to climb one fewer step than I did to get into the role that I am currently. Control what you can control. And I love Jonathan's push for you all to make a LinkedIn post about this event. Tag these two LinkedIn whizzes here. Tag me as well if you'd like. And we will all engage with your post. And that will certainly resonate with a lot of people in the audience. So share
someone just made a post right now. I was going to say, someone just made a post. Tulio just made a post. I put it in there.
There we go. There we go. You're already getting name drop in the chat in this conversation. So, well, thank you to our panelists and all of you for joining us for this live session. We've got more live and on-demand sessions for you to experience later on tonight. So be sure to check out the full list on our First Gens in Tech homepage. Jonathan, Jerry, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you both. Wish you both a good night.
Thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate it. And add us on LinkedIn. I'm getting some ads right there.
Bye, everyone.